In 2017, Senator Dianne Feinstein told lawyers at Facebook, Google, and Twitter, quote, "You created these platforms and now they're being misused, and you have to be the ones to do something about it, or we will." Social media companies react to incentive structures, including threats. They've responded by adopting the standards of third-party left-wing informational safety groups like the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, or GARM. GARM purportedly sets brand safety standards, objective standards by which advertisers and platforms can supposedly determine just what sort of content ought to be deemed safe for advertising. In reality, GARM acts as a cartel. Its members account for 90% of ad spending in the United States, almost $1 trillion. In other words, if you're not getting ad dollars from GARM members, it's nearly impossible to run an ad-based business. And if you're not following their preferred political narratives, the ones that Kara Swisher and Dianne Feinstein would follow, you will not be deemed brand safe. Your business will be throttled. We at Daily Wire have experienced this firsthand. In 2017, after Senator Feinstein made her threats to bring the weight of government down on social media platforms, Daily Wire YouTube channel saw a 1,000% increase in content enforcements over a 2-year period. Since 2021, after Democrat officials further turned up the heat on social media companies, my personal Facebook page has seen an over 80% drop in impressions.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about Mark Zuckerberg, who is back in the news, okay, because he has released a bombshell letter in response to the House Judiciary investigation into Facebook and their censorship practices, particularly right before the 2020 election and also during COVID. Now, Mark Zuckerberg has been in the news because he recently did an interview in which he talked about how much he admired Trump's resilience and the bravery that he displayed after the failed assassination attempt, right? He respected that Trump showed strength in a moment like that where he almost got his brains blown out.
I mean, on a personal note, it's, seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life.
So Mark Zuckerberg called me. First of all, he called me a few times. He called me after the event and he said that was really amazing. It was very brave. And, and he actually announced he's not going to support a Democrat because he can't, because he respected me for what I did that day. I think what I did maybe was to me, it was a normal response. But I was called by Mark Zuckerberg yesterday, the day before, on this same subject. And he actually apologized. He said they made a mistake, et cetera, and they're correcting the mistake. Google, nobody called from Google.
Okay, and now he has released this letter essentially apologizing for bending the knee to Democrats, revealing that, hey, I should not have allowed Facebook to censor content related to COVID-19 that the Biden administration pressure us to censor, okay, because this is how authoritarian the Democrat Party has become, okay? They are trying to subvert and undermine the First Amendment and take away people's free speech rights through pressuring these social media platforms to censor on behalf of Democrats, right? To censor opinions that Democrats do not like.
Now, you said earlier this year that you disbanded the Disinformation Governance Board, which I thought was totally unconstitutional, but that turns out to be, at best, misleading. That's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what you're doing. Your own quadrennial review, which was just reported in the press, says that disinformation is going to be the new focus at DHS. The Quad Review says that DHS plans to target, I'm quoting now, inaccurate information domestically on a wide array of subjects, including, quoting, the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic, the efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines, racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and the nature of U.S. support for Ukraine. A federal judge has just found as a finding of fact, Mr. Secretary, that your office, and I'm going to quote now, is supervising the nerve center of federally directed censorship. Here's another email, August 20th, 2021. Facebook writes again to HHS and highlights that Facebook is increasing the strength of our demotions for COVID and vaccine-related content. April 16th, 2021, Rob Flaherty at the White House circulates a Zoom meeting invitation to Twitter employees stating White House staff will be briefed by Twitter on vaccine misinformation. We have example after example of this administration coordinated, apparently, according to a federal court, by your agency, pressuring, coercing social media companies to engage in censorship. Is that constitutional?
That is unequivocally false.
Is what the emails show.
It is unequivocally false, Senator.
You are not pressuring the big tech companies to take down accounts. You are not meeting with them to ask them to censor on your behalf.
That is correct. We are not.
Mr. Secretary, it has been established for years in this country, as you very well know because you're a lawyer, that the federal government may not use private third parties to engage in activities that are unconstitutional. That's exactly what you and this administration are doing. You are leveraging private companies to carry out censorship on your behalf. It's dystopian, but worse than that, it's unconstitutional.
It's also false.
CEO Mark Zuckerberg is pointing fingers at the Biden administration over COVID-19. The head of Facebook and Instagram's parent company, Meta, says in 2021 he was pressured to censor social media content about the pandemic. The comments came in a letter that Zuckerberg sent to the House Judiciary Committee. Zuckerberg specifically mentions posts that Meta classifies as humor and satire. He says he regrets censoring content and that he would push back if he was asked to do it again. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles joins us now. Ryan, what else did Zuckerberg say in this note?
Well, Zuckerberg made it clear that he felt that the campaign that the White House had at that time during the height of the pandemic went too far, and that he felt that to a certain extent that Meta, the company that he is the CEO of, bowed to that pressure in a way that he wishes now, looking back on it, that they'd been a bit more forceful in pushing back. In this letter that Zuckerberg sent to the House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, Zuckerberg outlines many of the concerns he had about that pressure campaign, and he talks specifically about how the White House was concerned about posts that went beyond just specifically the COVID pandemic, but also related to humor and satire and other things along those lines. And he says, ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take these comments down, and we own those decisions. I believe that the pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. That is Mark Zuckerberg apologizing for bending the knee to Democrats, okay? Saying, look, I was wrong for caving to their demands for censorship. Now, again, this is something that should be very disturbing to the average American, because what is happening is that Democrats have become so emboldened that they believe that they can subvert the Constitution and take away people's free speech rights. Again, this is why this election is so important. People have to remember that Kamala Harris was one of these individuals that was behind the Disinformation Governance Board that would essentially formally use the White House and the government to pressure these social media companies into censorship, right? She was behind that, okay? Kamala Harris is a communist. She is a tyrant. And I think a lot of people are understanding, okay? They're waking up and they're seeing the writing on the wall in regards to the direction of the Democrat Party. And they're saying, you know what? Let me back away from this, right? And that could be what is happening with old Zuck, okay? Apparently, Vivek Ramaswamy had a conversation with Zuck not too long ago, I believe at an MMA fight. And Vivek basically is suggesting that he had some influence on Mark, and whether or not he's going to apologize for his role in bending the knee to the Democrat Party in censorship. So I want to react to it because Vivek said this months ago. He talked about this, and now lo and behold, Mark Zuckerberg is coming out and apologizing. And this just shows you how great Vivek really is. He's doing the Lord's work in the shadows.
I think in the private sector, there's room for some level of leadership here where people owning this through honesty, I think, would go a long way. So I was at the UFC 300 fight this last weekend. Great day, by the way. A lot of good fights that day. But I was sitting right up there, cage side, and Mark Zuckerberg was there too. So we had a chat in between some of the fights. He's into fighting, and yeah, whatever. I'll just spill the beans and share what we talked about. But yeah, he was telling me something to the effect of he's really into MMA, and so he said, we've become so neutered as a country, right? Why shouldn't we just embrace that we have these human instincts? I've grown to like MMA quite a bit. So I was like, yeah, I agree with you. Okay, we're all sitting here watching UFC and talking about how great it is to watch UFC, and we've become neutered as a country. I said,
AKA testosterone, right? That's what he's talking about. Okay, apparently he's definitely transformed, right? He's transformed himself, and with the increase in testosterone, as you can see over time, it seems as if he's kind of changing his politics. I don't know.
Well, what about that with respect to speech? How do you feel about that? And then he kind of paused for a second. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I think you'd actually make the same argument for just saying that you get to say what you want in this country. We become too neutered by trying to have central moderators of who decides what you can and can't say. And, his response was, well, look, I'm actually a lot more pro-free speech than people might know. And I've actually known a lot of his own tendencies. I believe that's actually probably true. It's about bending the knee and buckling to pressure. And so what I told him, and he said he would think about it, is, hey, listen, man, I think you could actually do a service to this country if you just came out, if it was in your heart, if you actually meant it, if you say you're pro-free speech and you actually mean it, to just say, hey, I screwed up. You know what? Locking Donald Trump out of an account, a major president of the United States and now presidential candidate, to say that the decision to silence somebody and suppress them, even if I agree or disagree with what they had to say, was making the decision under pressure, under forces of pressure where a lot of people were buckling to outside pressure. We become neutered as a country, and all of us are subject to that kind of pressure, and some of us screwed up, and I screwed up. And if I were to make that same decision again, I wouldn't make the same decision. If you said that, I think that would have a therapeutic effect on the country. That's a form of accountability. The best kind of accountability is where you actually own it for yourself. And I think people in this country, I think it's part of our human nature, there's a part of us that wants vengeance, but there's also part of us that is hungry to forgive, actually. I think that that's one of the Christian values that the nation was founded on. It's a founding value of Judeo-Christian value. It's a founding value of this country. It's a value of many faiths across the world. It's something in our nature that opens our heart to forgiveness, but it requires somebody who deserves to be held accountable to be the first person to hold themselves accountable if they're that person. I think that goes a long distance too. And so if a guy like Mark Zuckerberg, that was the extent of our conversation. I think he left it off saying he'd think about it. Huh? That's where it ended. Yeah, that is definitely where it ended.
Weird.
But whether it's a member of the press at CNN, whether it's a guy who leads a large platform like Meta, whether it's a U.S. president, even if it's not Donald Trump saying I screwed up, but we screwed up as a country, and we're talking together, leading this entire nation, that we as a federal government have screwed up for the last 20 years. And I'm saying this not to blame somebody else, but I'm saying this on behalf of the government of the United States to apologize to the people of the systematic lies that we have told you. Not me as an individual, but we as leaders of this country have told you for the last 20 years. But I'm saying it with the goal of saying we want to turn the page and move on as one nation under God. That's a separate discussion for another day. I think the four-letterization of God in our culture, I think, is something that has left people hungry for purpose too. But if we come back to just admitting those failures, that's, I think, the best form of accountability, rather than one side having to extract that vengeance from the other. But that does require a level of self-awareness. I think that does require a level of authenticity and temperance. And I think of most leaders of technology companies, I think Elon Musk has done a great service by bringing a competitive dynamic to the table that paves the way for this. But if the likes of, the leaders of Google and YouTube and Facebook, countless other platforms, stepped up to the plate and say, hey, we got it wrong, and here's where we got it wrong, and not in some fake sort of faux humble kind of way to check the box and move on, but in a real way, and have behaviors that then reflect that they mean it, I think that's far better than trials of prosecution for, breakages of the rule of law in ways that challenge legal theories to push those prosecutions. It may be required at a certain point in time that you require legal accountability. Certainly for government actors who violated the law, I think that that's warranted. But to take it then the next step, how great would it be if we actually had a culture of leaders of those institutions just admitting their mistakes, doing it honestly, changing their behavior in a way that's credible, not some fake admission, but a real admission of accountability. I think that would be a long way that people even outside of politics, leaders like Zuckerberg, could actually do a great service to this country if they actually owned the mistakes they'd made and changed their behaviors accordingly on their own. And I think we have an opportunity where I don't rule that out. I've not lost hope on that happening.
Yeah. So who knows if Vivek influenced Zuck? It sounds like he did, which is crazy to think about, right? How influential Vivek is. I mean, he's one of the best speakers, talkers in politics in regards to how he articulates his vision and his view and perception on life. And the fact that he can apparently influence Mark Zuckerberg to apologize for censorship is pretty powerful stuff. Now, I do agree with Vivek in the sense that, yeah, it's not enough to just come out and apologize. Like, I think what these platforms really should do is not just apologize, but also correct their wrongs, right? I mean, a lot of people have lost their livelihoods, especially during the pandemic, saying things that turned out to be true just a year or two later, okay? Because the conspiracy theories always seem to just be delayed facts, okay? And the facts seem to be conspiracy theories, right? That's how our politics has been over the past 2 or 3 years. And again, you've seen people lose their incomes. They've lost their platforms for being right too early, okay? And platforms like Facebook have participated in that, and I think that's wrong, okay? I don't think it's just enough to say, hey, I apologize. I think that you have to right the wrongs as well, too. And that is one issue that I do have with a lot of these platforms, that they will come out and they'll change the rules and say, oh, we're wrong. Okay, now you can say whatever you want about the election. Okay, well, it's like, what about all those people who were saying these things, you know, back when you was banning them, right? Again, that's what I have a problem with. And same thing when it comes to COVID. But I don't know what's going on with Zuck. I think Zuck, like Elon Musk, probably is having a change of heart, right? A lot of these tech guys, okay, that are waking up and saying, hey, you know, I'm not sure if I like the direction that this country's going in. You know, Zuck posted that picture of him on 4th of July, I believe, of him with the American flag. He was wakeboarding. And it was an awesome photo, right? He's really embraced patriotism. He's embraced masculinity, right? And lo and behold, it seems as if his viewpoints may be changing. I don't know, okay? He still could be a Democrat, liberal operative. I have no clue whatsoever, but I don't think that this is a coincidence, right? I don't think it was a coincidence that he just happened to talk to Vivek and Vivek told him that. I don't think it's a coincidence that, you know, he's undergoing this transformation where he is, again, embracing masculinity, okay, and things of that nature. I don't think it's a coincidence to see him now come out and to apologize and say, hey, you know, I was wrong about this. Because people do change. And I personally would have liked for Mark Zuckerberg to change a long time ago, for him not to do this, okay? In 2020, where he affected the outcome of the election by suppressing the Hunter Biden story and then doing the bidding of the Democrat Party and donating $400 million to them and stuff like that. I would rather him have not done that at all. But as we've seen all too often throughout the last 4 years, the best way to red pill a leftist, a liberal, is just to give them what they want, right? A lot of people have been red pilled just by experiencing Democrats, this administration, the authoritarianism, and they say, you know, I'm not sure if this is something that I can support. So who knows? Maybe he's one of those people. I don't know. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.